Much fun doing this, but I gotta tell you, the thing that makes these shows is the audience. I feed off of that. Hopefully you'll feed off of the energy up here too. There's not a lot of rules. If we say something you like, cheer. If I say something that pisses you off, go and hiss. When the dialogue picks up again, bring it down to a dull roar so that everyone can be heard. The last 15 minutes, I always have a soapbox period. And again, no filters. What you say is what gets recorded on that tape. If you cuss, you win at my deadness. So if you can get your point across without dropping the F-bomb, that would be great. But I'm not here to filter and regulate the speech, so say what you will when you get up to that mic. Because bear that in mind. That's about it for the announcements. It really is that simple. Grab a seat, make yourself comfortable. If you got to use the bathroom, just go and try not to flush, because that would be important too. Do what you got to do, but realize these mics are sensitive and will pick up almost anything. And I'm scared. I think that's the record button. 3, 2, 1. Well, howdy there, patriots and obedient vassals. Welcome back to another big old dose of red-pilled politics, a show that is not FDA approved. It can only mean one thing. It probably won't kill you. You might learn something. So, I'm your opinionated and abrasive host, Dave Kopazc, and I got two very special guests to talk about something extremely important. To my right is Ms. Guzzo. She is an activist from Massachusetts. I've seen her at a number of rallies and different events. She's going to be here tonight to talk about a group she has started in her own hometown. And Donna Calorio to my left, she is the founder of Common Core Forum, statewide group. So we got a little touch of the local, a little touch of the statewide, and we're going to try to all bring it together here all at once. So please, give my guests a big round of applause. This is a really, really important subject, and I hope everyone takes something out of it tonight. But I want to share with you a little personal experience. I've got 3 sons, Mark, David, and Luke. 2 of them I homeschooled. I didn't pull them out of school just because I was an angry parent, although I was angry. At the time, I was actually the chair of the school district's parent advisory council. They sucked one of my kids into special ed. In 3 years in a row, they tried to medicate him. And finally, I had a school psychologist stand up at a meeting. They included his teacher, the special ed teacher, the principal, and a number of staff there at the school. And she leaned over. "You gotta get your David medicated." My wife, oh boy, she knew. And sure enough, I triggered. I stood up, I looked at the principal, and I said, "You do realize I could get on my phone, call the police, and have that woman hauled out of here in handcuffs. She does not have the credentials to prescribe medication to my son." The very next day, I wrote out a 1-paragraph letter pulling out of school. And they're both the better for it. The child who was in special ed and supposed to have these learning disabilities scored in the upper 90 percentile in science, which was not one of his strong suits, even though his dad's a bit of a buck in that. But it wasn't something he was comfortable with and didn't like. But, you know, he tested out and he did very well. It's amazing. We heard at a conference earlier this evening about working with the children with their strengths. Some of them learn genetically, visually, audio, and you got to find what that mechanism to get the information through. And I don't see that present in Common Core. It's a cookie cutter approach. The economics and the industries are different from one state to the next. There are no 2 states that are the same, so I fail to see how a national standard is going to help in any way, shape, or form. So, you know, I don't know everything, and I like to reach out to my colleagues, and I do believe in letting people do what they do best. So that's why I asked these 2 ladies to come on today and explain a little bit about what Common Core is, a little bit more about what their group is and what it does, and at the end we're going to be fielding some questions. So what I'd like to do is start out with Jolene. Tell us a little bit about yourself, the group that you're said, I just can't take any more. I am injecting myself into this issue. Take away, Tony.
Thank you, Dave, so much for having me here today. It's my pleasure to be here with you and with you all. As Dave explained, I am here for a reason. I am here because this subject has been my life since September 2013. I have been out of my mind fighting this battle, and there's been so many highs, so many lows with my own school committee, hearing the news about the park in Massachusetts, only to be said that Common Core is not going anywhere. Lots of ups and downs. I'll tell you a story that really pulled my trigger. It started in September 2013. My daughter just entered the 4th grade. I have 3 children. I have 2 boys that are older than her. One's in 8th grade now, and one's a junior in high school. I've been through the ropes. I know this school district. We moved to this school district just for the schools, just so my children have a nice, great education. We've researched all communities around us. My husband and I said, Wilbraham, Mass. It's got the best school. The beginning of the school year in September 2013, my daughter enters the 4th grade, nothing new. Both her sons, boys went there, no big deal. She came home after the first week of school. She said, Mom, I'm going to need your laptop a lot this year. I'm like, whoa, I just got it for Christmas. And she said, Mom, I need it for this, I need it for that, I need it for additions now. And I'm like, okay, all right, maybe they're just introducing a lot of more technology into the school this year. She logs on, she's on the computer for 3 hours a night. And I'm like, Auntie, what are you doing on my computer? And I'm watching the thing, she's doing these math games, and then she's clicking on something that looks like Facebook. It's called Edmodo, but it's Facebook for the classroom. All her friends can log in, her teacher looks in, and I'm like, wow, that's really cute. All right, so you can share information and everything. It's all a lot source. There was other math websites, just a lot of things I never seen before. So that was all fine for the first week of school. The second week, she's on the computer and she starts crying. Like, what is going on now? And she says, I just don't get it, now I'm being timed. And I'm looking over her shoulder, I'm like, what is that? And she said, it's the new math that we have to do. And my husband and I are looking, like, I know it's been a while since the boys were in 4th grade, but do you remember seeing anything like this? My husband's like, I don't even know what that is. So she wants our help. She wants our help because she knows she's being timed, and we can't help her. And the 2 boys couldn't help her because it was very unfamiliar with them. I wish I could remember what it was at the time, but I was so upset. Now, the 4th night of her crying, I finally wrote a letter to the teacher, and I said, no more internet for her at all. No more of this online assessments or whatever, this homework. I want her to come home with pen and paper, sit down, and do her homework with us. I don't understand these websites and what's going on. So I got a call that day from the principal, and we made arrangements to sit down. And before I really sat with the principal, I took a couple of days and really studied up. I looked into the policies of these websites that she's on, looking who created these websites. Where is all of this coming from? I just really couldn't wrap my brain around what this all was. And bingo, I found Common Core, and I looked into it's funded by all of these things. Even that little Facebook page that she has, I go and I look into the policy, and all the information that could be shared on this private page that's just meant for her classroom is accessible to third parties. I mean, it's everything, even the teacher's website that gave the classroom homework and everything to do for the day. If you go into the policy, it's not private. It can all be used to track information, to track data. We'll talk about that later. But, so I went and she was concerned, well, why would you not want her to get the internet? I said, well, because I've always signed a form when the kids went to school that says, do you allow your kids to go on the internet? And I've always said yes. Right now, I'm signing hers, and I don't want her to go on the internet. So she called in the superintendent. We all sat down. We had another meeting with my husband, the superintendent, the director of curriculum, and the principal of the school. And it really wasn't pretty. I mean, I ended up leaving. I was so upset. I looked misinformed. I looked, there's just a lot of educated jargon going on with their fancy educator words. And I felt stupid. My husband's like, did you really think about what you were doing before we went in there with a bunch of educators? I mean, we look like fools. And I'm like, well, you think we look like fools because you haven't read everything I read, and I didn't even think that they know what's going on. So at this point, I'm labeled as the crazy lady that's nuts, and at this point in the game, this is where parents just, I'm out of here. I'm not going to even touch this anymore because I don't know what I'm talking about. And you look foolish. I do look foolish, but I'm so thick-headed that I'm like, oh, no, I'm not losing this. I'm going to go and I'm going to do more homework. And I put together a YouTube video. It's called The Dark Side of Common Core. I haven't even looked at it in a year and a half. I don't even know how many kids it got or whatever, but it's really informative. And I showed my husband it. Wow, okay. I get it. I sat down with the superintendent and the director of curriculum, and I presented it to them. And now I was the one directing the meeting, and they kind of were captivated by it. I think they probably learned a few things. Of course, they probably didn't care to know about what I presented to them. But, might I continue on?
No, we got an hour.
So I'll make it quick. So then after that, I was finally able to pull my daughter out of assessments in the Common Core online assessments and activities for 3 weeks. And she was so thrilled. She was so happy. She was stress-free. She came home from school happy. I was happy because she just brought home printed out papers from the teacher doing math homework. It was great. 3 weeks later, I go and I sit there. I go for a parent-teacher conference to talk about how great she was doing. This is what I thought was going to happen. And I was going to go sit down with the teacher. We were to talk about how great it is that she's just doing so much better. She's so happy. No. A half an hour before the parent-teacher conference, I get a call from the superintendent telling me not to, basically telling me not to intimidate the teacher, and that she's not allowed to talk to about Common Core with me. So I'm like, oh, all right, okay. So I get to the school.
You were told by the superintendent of the school what you could and could not address. What did you tell the superintendent?
I was shocked. I always think about things after, I wish that I said it, but I just said, are you for real? I was going in there very happy, I wasn't going to in any way just about me. I'm pretty excited about, what's going on. Well, I just wanted to give you a heads up that she's not allowed to talk about Common Core. I go to sit down with the teacher, and no longer than a minute later, the principal comes and sits down next to me. And
who's intimidating who now?
Yes. So now I get told that my daughter is basically unteachable without having a sign and being a part of the class. She's holding the kids back from computer lab. She's really hurting the whole class just because of my decision to keep my daughter out of these things. So I basically went in there, agreed to put her back on the assessment and came out to me.
Now, what about parents that don't have internet access? I mean, it's pretty widespread, but not every household has internet.
Exactly.
What happens to those children?
I'm not sure. I don't even think that then they have to stay after school. I think I asked them that question. They can always use the computer desk if they need to. Obviously I exhausted those sources. So my next step is going to the school. I wrote so many emails. I still to this day go to every single school committee meeting just so they see my happy face there. And they listened to me at the beginning. They agreed that this was ridiculous. I mean, they're seeing what's happening to their own kids in school, and I'm getting a good dialogue with these people. And here I am thinking I'm making headway. They call in the Department of Education. That loan from the Department of Education comes in to our school district, takes a tour of our beautiful new high school. He leaves. Everybody's silent. No one will speak to me again after that. No one. No school committee members, teachers already can't because they were warned that they'll lose their teaching license if they speak, if they're critical about the Common Core. And I have that these three very valuable resources in our district. So here I am now. I have to take it up another notch now. So now I am looking every state rep, everybody that's running for anything, I'm going after. I want everybody to hear me because it's obviously it can't work on a local level. You're not going to get anywhere on a local level.
Now, you started a group here, the Falcons for Educational Freedom. I assume if it's a group, you can't be the only mom or the only parent that's kicked on here.
No, we have 60 people, I think, on our group, but I know that we have a lot of outside visitors that won't pick the public group, so anybody can come in. Everybody seems to know what we're doing, even though they don't belong to the group, which is great. I mean, I encourage the superintendent to look at our page, see what we're talking about. We have some pretty good conversations on there, and some get really fired up, and sometimes the school committee likes to come in and chime in, and that brings us to another subject of what the school committee is going to do right now. Right now, the chair of the school committee is trying to pass a new policy that says the school committee members are not allowed to associate or argue with constituents on social media. So now we can't even talk to our school committee.
That is probably one of the most un-American things I've ever heard of. We have to write to these police symbol. We have to write to not only our elected officials, but our fellow citizens around us, and that thirst for education, I guess, needs to be quenched. And the only way for that is public dialogue. And I see here, the administrators are dumbing it right up. They're not going to let their teachers talk out of fear that they'll say something self-incriminating or reveal parts of the program that are legitimate parts of the program. This is coming out in little tiny drips and drabs from what I've seen. Common Core was barely put on the screen not long ago, and no one thought much of it, but it's because not much information went out. And it seems that the more it does, the more questions arise, and now we're finding, you know, like with these math problems, that I see an example online. It's just mind-numbing, you know, 2 plus 3 equals unicorn, all right? And no wonder your daughter was crying. A child of that age deals with all kinds of stresses. I can vaguely remember my childhood and going through adolescence and whatnot. It's a very confusing time when things are going right. I can only imagine a child sitting there in front of a computer screen. They were just crying because this stuff don't make sense. And they shouldn't be crying. It doesn't make sense. Oh boy. And Donna, you're involved with an organization that's statewide, the Common Core Forum. Now, are you hearing stories similar to this in the other communities?
Yes. So let me give you a little bit of background of how I came to be active in Common Core. I have 3 children. 2 have already gone through school, and I have 1 that's presently in the school system now. I'm educated as an adjunct professor for 22 years at a local community college, and and I also was an elected official from 2011 to 2013 on the school committee. Now, when I had one of my first debates in 2000 and prior to my election, 2011, one of the questions that came up was, what do you think about Common Core? This is in 2011. So back it up a little bit. In 2010, in the summer of 2010, we were all barbecuing. Our Commissioner of Education and our Governor decided to take on the Common Core. Behind closed doors, Dave. No one knowing about it, just slid it right in. No educators were involved in the process of voting. No teachers were involved in the input of what the standards would be. It was a joint effort between the Department of Ed and the Governor to allow us to adopt the Common Core State Initiative. And we had to do 4 things, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. We had to adopt the standards as is. It's trademarked, we cannot change it. We had to adopt a very thorough teacher evaluation that would link with the Common Core standards. We had to increase our database, and our third thing was we had to have a national test, either the PARC or the Smarter Balance, to adopt into our system. So back to the debate. So I went to the debate, I got a little, I said, I don't even know what the Common Core was. This is 2011. So I looked into it briefly, did a little small Google search, and I said, whoa, national standards, I am not for that, I'm for local control. So I came out right out of the gate saying, I'm not for Common Core. It was like a 2-statement thing. Everybody else was for it that was running the school committee in Worcester. Now, Worcester School Committee is very different than running in a town because it is where Tim Murray began, it's where Joe O'Brien began, it's where the big leaders in the state began in a city. So it's a big time, office to hold, and it takes a lot of money, so it's a little bit of a different dynamic. It's political more than for the children. So as I went along, I got elected. It was a very interesting election. I won by 2 votes, and then I lost by 5 votes, and then I eventually won by 30 votes. So we had a recall, whole thing. So the interesting thing is, as I was elected, I was appointed to the Finance Committee. And what I found is, with $325 million budget for 25,000 children in Worcester Public Schools, some of you do that math, it's not a Common Core example, I want you to do it out. It's around 11, 12,000 per child. So when you have that much money to educate kids, you're thinking, how can we not educate these kids? So I kept hearing, I kept looking at this budget, and there's no money, there's no discretionary money to move around. So I would get up there in budget season and I would propose that we cut this and cut that, cut this. And it was like, oh, we can't cut that, we can't do that. And then I'm realizing that I have an expansion of technology, et cetera, and it all came back to Common Core. So I started dig, and what I realized was that the more I was digging around and the more that I would get up there to the school committee and I would say, I want us to look at Common Core. It's like, oh no, just like what she was hearing, is that it's a done deal. It's a done deal. So I go around to the teachers, I said, so what do you think of Common Core? They're like, what? So if this is a done deal and the teachers supposedly know that it's happening, how come the teachers don't know what the Common Core is? We don't have that here, they said. So when they started to implement the Common Core in 2013, fully implemented, the teachers started to say, what is this?
And it was an explosion in 2013, even to school, and they had like a ton of bricks.
Right. So the teachers now are realizing we don't like this. So in our district, we had the same thing. We had gag orders. Teachers were not allowed to speak to the parents. They would shuffle them to the principals. And then the principals would shuffle them if they didn't agree further up the ladder. So what you were getting is you were getting like, okay, this is getting toxic. We're not going to use the word. We're just going to just brush it under the thing. So I brought up a lot of different things at the school committee. And during the 2013, when I ran for re-election, it was very interesting is that the Chamber of Commerce came out again for the Common Core. Well, the Chamber of Commerce was very much one of their memos to the different chambers from the National Chambers of Commerce was, here is a pamphlet telling you how to elect pro-Common Core people. So I came up very strong because I believe, and I will say this over again, if you're going to run for an office and you get your seat, you work your butt off for those years in that office for what is right. You don't sit around to get reelected because that's not your job. And you look for the candidates that are going to be willing to not get reelected. That's your candidate. That's your candidate to the mother that will stand up, or the father that will stand up for school committee in your town. Because you have to get the grassroots elected in your school committees. And what I found was, the more I pushed Common Core, the more I saw writing on the wall. I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. But I was there. I wanted to get reelected. I didn't get reelected, and that's okay. Because right after that, I started speaking up about parents' rights, and especially the opt-out movement back in the fall. I started to speak up, and we got a lot of national press on our movement. And our mayor was not for parents' rights, and neither were 3 or 4 school committees. So we had to push through what we had to do to get, and I was on the other side now. I was the parent speaking up on the school committee. And then what happened was, people kept saying, you need to start a statewide group. And the reason why we needed to start a statewide group is because there are smaller groups. Remember, our group is commoncoreforum.org, if you want to look it up. We are not funded by anybody. We do not accept any donations to our group. If we're going to have a speaker and people want to chip in some money, that's fine, but we accept no donations because no one owns us. No one is that we are completely volunteer. And right now we have about, I'd say 3,000 members statewide. And these are all these little pockets of groups. We have 100 strong activists like myself that are working in their districts trying to get rid of Common Core. And in March, someone encouraged me to start the group. I started the group, it took off, and it was interesting. Just right now, when we were just discussing what we're going to talk about here, we found out that ABC News wrote up what's happening with Common Core in all the states. ABC.com, I think it's the website, I'm not sure. And in Massachusetts, it said there is a strong parent group called Common Core Forum fighting statewide to get rid of the Common Core.
We just found that out.
We just found that out. So that message out without any funding, because there are passionate parents that are out there that say enough is enough. And just recently, this is kind of how the tables will turn, and Dave, we know because the union, we haven't heard a peep from. And last January, my local union, who did not endorse me, okay, asked me to speak in front of the delegates about the park testing, which is the testing consortium that Massachusetts is involved in, that's tied in with Common Core, because they were not happy with the park testing because they were starting to see what it was doing to the kids and what it was doing to them by their teacher evaluation being tied into it. And interesting enough, myself, I went to go speak, and at 5 o'clock that night, the news got out to the administration, and who showed up? Like 3 administrators against me. At the 81 delegates of the local union meeting, and I blew them away. I blew them away, and they booed administration because they knew that I knew my facts and I knew what was happening. And then in March, we got I asked my union to do a I'm trying to think of what it's called, when they were not in favor of the park. And they wrote it up. It didn't get a lot of press because it got just kind of muffled through, but that's fine. But then in fact we had, I was asked to be a delegate at the union, which was kind of interesting. I said, sure, I'll go. And I was then asked to speak in front of the 1,200 union members, Massachusetts Teachers Association. Now, I'm very conservative, and that's okay, because Common Core is not a right or a left issue. It is a right and a wrong issue. And there are parents, there are teachers, there are Republicans, there are Democrats, there are conservatives, there are liberals that do not believe in Common Core. We have to break the walls down and say, this is who I am inside. Parent stories. Only parent stories, because that's the only way we're going to create change in the state of Massachusetts. And how we are going to create change is we are going to have to get out there and we're going to have to speak about it. So what we do in our group is that we do have forums throughout the state. We have one coming up. And what we do is we educate parents. We educate school committee members. So last year in June, which is another very interesting story, because we're all part of this, and that we decided that we would petition statewide all the school committee members to have them vote for the MCAS as opposed to the park to kind of stop the bleeding. Okay? So what we have to do first of all is we got to educate our school committee members. They did not realize that they had the right and the responsibility to vote on whether they were going to do the MCAS of the park, that it was not their superintendent's job. And this is very interesting because this went throughout the state. We ruffled a few feathers and we hardcore petitioned these school committee members, and to our amazement, 66% of the school districts voted for the MCAS as opposed to the park. We had an outstanding success. Now, the commissioner is manipulating the numbers, and he says he's had victory. But we went public with our victory. And our victory is what really counts because we worked so hard. And we're working this year to educate those park districts. And we're going to help parents opt out or refuse the test. So that is our newest campaign, is refusing the test. Because, as they say, the Common Core is embedded right now in our educational system. We have to stop the bleeding. We have to stop it with the assessment. The backbone, right. Let's get rid of the park assessment first and move from there.
Well, we've got other programs that back in the Bush era. We have, the Goals 2000, I think.
Yes.
I mean, there's linkages here. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, what I'm saying is this didn't happen overnight. Nationalized standards didn't happen overnight. This has been a long process, and there's been a lot of different groups on board. Those that want big government. And it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans that want big government because it's their safety net. It's the way bread and butter. It's the way that they make the money they make. It's the way, right now, this is Fed education. We have large corporations like Pearson Education who is writing the tests, right? And the tests now have been proven to have kids fail. So what happens when a kid fails? They have to retake the test. What does that mean to the district? More what? Money to Pearson, to the park. So what you're getting is you built in a failure rate. So the kids would fail, and then they would thus have to take the test over again. So you get Pearson get money, you got Bill and Melinda Gates. Who's behind the whole thing? Billions of dollars for this. And you're going to have different types of large corporations that wrote our standards.
And if they show, if they show that these kids are failing these tests in big numbers, what do they have to do? They have to rewrite the test, which gives more money to these big companies. I mean, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation sunk billions of dollars into this. Why? Because they're going to make billions of dollars. All these schools, I don't know how many districts are in all the United States, all of them need all new computer systems. They need all new software. Our schools were completely revamped with all new whiteboards that the kids, they're interactive whiteboards, the kids can go right up to them, and it's so much money to be made.
Can I recap here? So let's just talk about this. 10 reasons why we want to oppose Common Core. Common Core is a federal takeover of education. Number one, no questions asked. It's a top-down. It's documentation, so do not let anybody say it was state-led, because it was not.
Can I take that one step farther?
You can. It's your show, Dave.
I definitely agree. This is not a local thing or a state thing. You both said the parents had no idea about Common Core itself, and they were involved in it directly. The state obviously is not the mover of this because it's applying national standards. But I would submit that the movement at a global level exists to control the children's mind, to sever the linkage between parents and their children. And I say you'll find things that are frighteningly familiar to what you have there in chapter 36-2 and -3 of Agenda 21. This is something I've done numerous shows on. They're talking about land use policy and population control and all kinds of things, the ways of controlling society and putting them in a box, creating good global citizens and environmental voters out of our children being essential. So on a future show, I'm probably going to focus a little bit of attention on that because I see language in that 1992 document that is almost identical to the verbiage that is in this.
And that's the thing is, first of all, you have to decide you want federal standards. Number one, no matter where you are left or right, are you for federal standards? Common Core is bad for the parents because we can't verify with the homework. We don't know the systems that were put into place. It's bad for the teachers because it's a tie-in with, veteran teachers can't get the kids to learn anymore and they don't know how to teach it because the policies were never benchmarked. They were never, this is a major experimentation with our children. It's bad for taxpayers because you're paying the cost. It's costing so much of our budget on this unfunded mandate of Common Core. It's bad for the students because they're stressed out and they feel the pressure of the Common Core and it doesn't work because it just doesn't work.
Creativity stifled. If all these kids are being pigeonholed into whatever shows up,
One size fits all, right?
Where is the imagination? All of our veterans in the world, go back and look at Tesla and all the greats. These guys thought outside the box. Most of them would have been run through the meat grinder of their special ed department if they were alive today. And these are the geniuses, the people that really were the shakers and movers. And it was because of that ability to think creatively, right, wrong, or indifferent, but that's the power of being an individual.
Well, we did the pigeonholing.
Yeah, but I'd like to segue into that, please, if I could.
Yeah.
In order to be a great writer, you must read more, right? It's just well known. You take all the classics, the great books that you really get that good American literature foundation. They're wiping all that out. We're going to have our kids right now are learning 50% informational text. Do you know what that is? Informational text. It's going to, what they're doing, and it's funny because it's not funny, but I went through my daughter's papers and I found, I looked through it and I couldn't believe it. She had a whole section on her informational text that she was learning about, and what it was how to read petitions. She's 9 years old. She's learning about Obama's executive orders. What child needs to be reading that?
No. My daughter read out of her 3 summer reading books. 3. She's in AP English. Let me say AP English. 3 summer reading books. 1 was a classic and 2 were economics books. That 66% of her reading was text. It had nothing to do with English. So they are funneling in, and the year before, it was on global warming.
That's what it is. It's a lot of global warming and a lot of left-wing things are being, I know it's a strong word to use, but you can't even think of any other word.
But if you want to change it, now you look at your age. This is Common Core approved. Before you go to your school, you battle it out. You'd say, hey, listen, why are they reading going to change it. Now, their fallback line is, it's Common Core approved.
You said it was trademarked, it could not be touched.
It
It
cannot
has to
be
be
touched.
This right
You
here
can
is
add 15%,
but
but
my 9-year-old's work in her studies on informational, the characteristics of informational text. The purpose is to inform, or explain, or persuade.
persuade.
Persuade. I mean, this is a 9-year-old writing down all this stuff. And if you read more into this, I don't even understand some of this things. It did explain facts and concepts. It says that you need to understand the cause and effect, the relationship. You need to have a background knowledge to understand complete ideas presented in the book.
So you stumbled down to an old interview of mine with Mrs. Beverly.
Yes.
She spoke very succinctly about consensus and how all good information in our schools is derived from consensus. So if the class decides that, 2 plus 2 is 5, and they can agree upon that, that becomes the basis of their knowledge base. And that's a crime.
And is it going to argue about that? Are they going to say, my kids right now, but are they going to say, I disagree with you. I think I'm going to be the only one in this class to kind of take my own view. Kids don't do that. They all. Exactly.
And the other thing is Common Core violates our privacy. And that's a whole other thing that I don't have time to get into, but just to know that now with just the testing and how the kids have to answer questions, it's going to be about 200 data points they're going to collect on your child. 400 data points on your child. So they may ask your child what religion they are. Who picks them up from school? Do they stand at the bus stop?
Mommy ever get mad? Does daddy have a gun? That type of stuff.
Right, so it's unconstitutional, we know, and it requires most states, which Massachusetts is #1, to move backwards. And just one quick thing I want to say before we go to question and answer is that, interestingly enough, Ohio pulled out of the Common Core. And while they're in their 2-year kind of time where they're going to write their standards, what do you think they're going to use for standards? They're going to use the Massachusetts standards, ones that we just threw out for Common Core. So we were up here with our standards, #1 in a lot of global even competition, and we are now going to be down here with our Common Core standards, and Ohio is actually taking our standards, which is great.
Was actually compared to countries, and we came
In the TIMSS test,
in the
right.
top 10. When Massachusetts itself, our little state, was compared to actual countries, we still ranked high.
Right. And now we are adopting the Common Core. So it's really important that anytime you have any opportunity to talk to someone, you very nicely have to say, so what do you think of the Common Core? Think of the teachers, even though you know they can't talk about it, the more they hear about it, the more you talk about it, the more I make sure it goes into comments, as I say, I come in public. So what do you think? I had a FedEx guy the other day. I said he's delivering a package. He goes, what is that big package? I go, yeah, they're Common Core signs. What do you think of the Common Core? And he never said that fuzzy maths thing. And I said, this is a young kid. He's like 20-something. I go, yeah, I like you. So people know about the Common Core. You just have to keep educating.
Well, I was at a Second Amendment rally, and I ended up, passing out Common Core forum papers. And I said, do you guys know about Common Core? No, right now, I don't know. I got into a whole big conversation with them, and they were appalled. They didn't even believe that the government was going to be in control of our children's education.
I saw an exercise under Common Core where they asked the kids to sit down and consider what they would change or strike from the Constitution. So that whole Second Amendment thing can go away if they want to decide that we don't need that anymore. And that's part of being a good local citizen, I guess. Absolutely horrendous. I don't know nearly as much as these ladies do, but I try to educate myself on all the things that we need to educate ourselves on. And, this is one of those things, and I just couldn't find one little iota.
You won't find any forums or groups. You won't find any forums or groups that are pro Common Core either, unless they're run by
Bumper stickers. You won't even, you won't have I love Common Core on the bumper stickers. will they know?
Well, you know what I want to throw out there? You touched on a couple of different things, and Beverly Ackman, she was such a resource. She came out and she was teaching us more political realm type techniques and things to keep this stuff out of our communities, visioning, census. Very, very common tool when they're working in your towns. They will get stakeholders to come out and speak on your behalf. I see it in the conservation department in my town. They will cherry pick the stakeholders to be those who speak on behalf of preservation for everybody. They cherry pick the same people that go to these meetings. I see the flyers that come into my office that says this invitation is non-transferable. I used to be, it was my job to outreach to the people in my town, say, please come to the seminar, you gotta learn about this. Now they're having visioning sessions, and they say, tell anybody else. And what happens in the conservation realm, I get a room with 12 tables, 8 of them are filled up with land trust people. They're going to speak on behalf of what's needed for preservation. That same tactics are happening here. They're not going out and getting a spectrum of people from the towns and from the society. They're going in there and they're cherry picking. They know who's going in there, what they're going to say before they say it. And then a nice press release comes out, hey, you know, this is what we decided is best, and moving forward, consensus has been reached.
But you know what, just to say that's really, really, really important, Dave, because what you have to do is don't give up, because if she backed off when they tried to intimidate her at that first meeting, they would not have the awareness. And the second thing is run for your local school committees, because this, or be on the conservation, or be on your local boards. Give your time to see what's happening here, because what's happening is that if you keep saying the same thing over and over again, they will eventually start to be the only person. And you are not the only person out there. You might be the only person in the room. I've been the only person in the room many times. But guess what? You're not the only person in the audience, because there's people either watching you, or someone will write a letter and say, I saw you at the school committee meeting, even though, you know, no one was for you, I am for you. So you have to realize that you are not alone. And we have a lot of people in the state of Massachusetts that are really, really upset and really concerned about Common Core. So it's just a matter of keep the message going. We do not want it. No, no, no.
Real quick, I had a school committee member that I didn't think was on my side for a long time come up to me one time, and I was really bummed out after a school committee meeting. And he's still just looked up at the chin and said, you have no idea how many people got their back on this. And that made me feel a hell of a lot better.
That's very true. A lot of times you get one person that speaks out and seems like not crowd in the crowd, but that one person represents the views of many others. A lot of people that are too shy to get up and say anything, and those days are over. Through silent consent, we've given up so much in this country, and I say those days are over. You know, I'm just one person. You're individuals doing everything you can. For all it's worth, you know, for all it's worth. I'd like to, if you have some kind of a summit or a large event coming up in the near future, I'd like to help put some people there, naming the woman that I just spoke about. She's got so much information, but another professional on privacy, probably the professional in the world, is Dr. Catherine Albrecht, who is a friend of mine. And if you'd like to put together an event, I'd like to help you put a couple of speakers there.
You know what, that's great, because what we decided to do part of Common Core Forum was to have these speaker series. And we have one coming up September 17th, and it's headed Lucas. She's a national figure. And then we're continually having, so we will talk about having data persons. I started off this year ago, May, with a speaker when I came up with the idea. It was funny. I was in the bathtub taking a bath, and I was like, you know, I think I'll have a Common Core Forum. This is before anything was, before I even had the group. And then I kept saying, oh my God, only like 5 people is going to show up. I packed the library at 125, and this is in 2013, May of 2013. We implemented, and I had two, fully implemented, and I had two, and Ted Rostowski and Ted Rebar.
We had some of these groups too. Sorry. If you ever get a chance to sit in, I would say
Yeah, and she's on, we have, yeah, and she's on, we have an event page on Comic Book Forum, and she is going to speak in a couple places throughout the state. So we try to post any events.
She's a former educator.
Now,
She came from the business
Well, she
system.
wrote the stand,
She
she wrote
wrote
the
the Massachusetts state standards that we just passed out, and she wouldn't sign off. She was practically begged to be on the validation committee for national court, and she wouldn't sign off on it. She just was appalled.
Yep.
So would you ladies field a few questions here from the audience? I always have a soapbox period at the end. So I'd like to open that up. If there's anyone that has any questions for myself or my guests, please step up to the microphone and be sure to wait for Keith.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Peach, and I'm from Massachusetts. My question is, how damaging do you think the media is for representing this?
Well, the media has a lot of money behind them. So what you're getting is, you're getting volunteer groups like ourselves that have no funding, but we have the passion and we're on the right side. And then you have the media out there trying to misuse it. So I think the media can be extremely damaging. But with the internet, we've been able to get our message out, and we have a strong following on Facebook, and we tweet, and grassroots sort of communication is really important. But the media it can be very difficult. We just got an article in the Globe, North County recently. They killed us in the comments section, but they wrote an article about our group, and we were very pleased with the write-up. So you're getting more and more media that likes this because they think it's, a little edgy.
I'll have put a little input on media, which I was really kicked off one day. I watch Fox News. I have my certain shows that I like. In the morning, I like my morning show on there. And there was a few times they had some story with a phone call, my dad, or anybody. When I turn it on, they're talking about Common Core. Then I started seeing the Common Core commercials, pro-Common Core commercials coming across Fox. And money talks. Fox, anyway, he was paid really good money to start airing some Common Core commercials on Fox, and that just blew me away because
People are losing faith in the mainstream media, and the fact that I'm sitting here on a Saturday night in the middle of Worcester speaks volumes.
Hey, that's my town.
Nothing against Worcester.
I'm a Boston boy.
But I'm going to tell you that we got to be our own media. You can't trust the media, be the media. And today, and let's face it, I don't know if it's too much government interference in our schools, but we have a generation of people right now that have very short attention span. And I'll tell you, a 5 or 10 minute YouTube video with some crunchy information can have an impact. So I want to completely encourage both of you ladies to, if anything, double down what you're doing as a service to yourself. You must be able to sleep at night knowing you're advocating for your own children to the extent that you can. But what you are other parents out there, and you got to know there's other little girls and little boys that are sitting there in front of that plastic computer screen crying at night, and that's got to stop. School should not make your children cry, ever.
One second, please. I just wanted you folks to know that while in the last 5 hours on my notifications on Facebook, Common Core Forum came up 8 times.
Wait a minute. What?
Christopher Mader from the Beat Potato Show. Donna, I was there at the Dr. Dupesta event. I filmed some of that. One of the most disturbing things that Dr. Dupesta spoke about was that part of the Common Core curriculum is to sexualize our children. There's a lot of emphasis on not just sex education. Everybody knows that at some point in time kids have to have that. But the way it's inculcated in the curriculum under Common Core. And here comes the question, is that when a child is overly sexualized or acting out sexual certain things, DCF gets involved. Obviously, they think that something's going on, the child has been molested, and then DCF gets involved. Or is promoting that, sexualizing that, and sexualizing our children. What's to stop DCF from looking at all the children because they're being educated on this stuff and then acting out on that? What's to stop DCF from just coming into all of our lives?
Well, I
Interesting.
don't know what, he's talking about the new health curriculum that is not been adopted by Massachusetts yet, but has been adopted by some states. And if you read it online, you just be really, I mean, I can't even tell you. But there's also what I think Chris made a really good point is they have a thing called writing across the curriculum. So what they'll do is they'll take a subject like, you know, whatever, global warming, and they'll write about it throughout the whole curriculum, English, math, gym class, and they write about a certain subject.
Like homosexuality and stuff that they are going to now incorporate in English literature and just little blurbs that they want at least once or twice a day, any subject to kind of desensitize the children towards something you would
The national agenda. Let's call it the national
it
agenda.
does have a name, it's the National
But
To supervent what cultural teachings parents have on their own children is to undo that. And the whole purpose of fifth grade is basically to break that allegiance between the child and parent and shift it towards government. Absolutely.
well, it's pretty sick when they have a detailed instruction manual set out by the Common Core how to masturbate in their years old and how to do it the proper way.
Serious?
And that's serious. We can look that up.
True. I read about that.
My name is John Locke. I'm one of the candidates for state rep here tonight. I was just a little confused on the enforcement side of Common Core and how that works. I think a lot of people are under the impression that it's a public school phenomenon, but it's in the parochial and in the homeschool season as well. And I was wondering if I could comment on how, what's the enforcement behind it? What are the consequences of that?
Well, I think, first of all, David Coleman, who is one of the chief architects of Common Core, is now on the college board. So what he did was now he is doing to the college board what he did to Common Core. He's going to streamline them. So if all kids believe they have to take the SAT or they're going to take an AP class, then whether they're in public, private, or Catholic school, they want to do good so they get into college. So he is like backpedaling it from the college board down now. So he is integrating two things. So now what's happening is a lot of the Catholic schools are getting money from the Gates Foundation, so they're running on board, and then they want the students to pass the SATs to get into these elite colleges. So we do see, though, a trend now in Massachusetts. I saw one school so far, it's called St. Benedict's in Natick, that is a non-Common Core school. It was for angry mothers that started a Catholic school. So you're going to see now a product of the non-Common Core start to pop up as soon as this. Common Core is going to fail. It's imploding, it's failing, okay? Park is imploding, it's failing. You know, it's just going to be a matter of time. We need to push it over the edge.
Just Romantic, I'm also the Kansas State representative, but I also have the luxury of being actually on the school committee. And just at the tail end of last academic year, we took a vote as a board in terms of what you were referring to, of acting on the part. We actually voted for a 1-year deferment, if you will. So this particular year, the students are going to take MCAS. But when you mentioned that it would be within the purview of the school committee to permanent opt-out, is that in fact a possibility? Or are we going to have to adhere to the will of the superintendent?
No, let me explain state statute. State statute in Massachusetts is that each school district has to abide by whatever the state assessment test is. Right now, our assessment test is the MCAS. Up allowed to do Common Core. But if a district doesn't want to do Common Core, they
Kids fail their,
but all the kids fail their, but all the kids may possibly fail their part or their MCAS.
Right, in our district, we actually have the inverse. They've already managed to inculcate Common Core into the curriculum, but we're gonna take the MCAS. So my concern obviously is, okay, now the kids are gonna fail the
well,
MCAS.
that's what happened with my daughter because she didn't know what a certain shape, she didn't know what a quadrangle was on the MCAS because she didn't learn any shapes or anything.
Well, the MCAS actually have been updated with Common Core questions. So unfortunately, the MCAS presently have Common Core questions. What we want to do, our ideal situation is to go back to the pre-2010 state standards, where we were #1 in the country, and align our MCAS with the pre-2010 state standards. So right now, we are in a bind, but we're trying to make a point here that we don't want to go any further. And if we can stop the bleeding in the heart, then what we can do is we can then say, okay, now the next step we want to do is we want to back it up to 2010. And that's what Ohio did.
Real quick, and then I'll get this going. Are there any project towns that are critical that you go to town that you're doing work in? Is there any place that my listeners or the people in the audience could go to help?
Well, if you go to our website, and what we're doing now is we are organizing people in areas where they feel that they want to work to get rid of part or to get the parents to refuse the test. So it's up to you as parents to tell us what you want. So I know like in North Reading, we had 60 parents show up at a school committee meeting to tell for the MCAS, to tell in the school committee voted for the park. So we have a lot of parents out there working hard. So we have areas of hotspots where parent energy, Fairhaven, tremendous amount of energy down there. We have Reading, we have in Shrewsbury, huge energy in Shrewsbury, and then we have, I don't know in your area, what areas might have in Park, but we believe right now, even though the MCAS are somewhat aligned to Common Core, we have to stop the bleeding now. And, you know, so.
Okay, so what some of you might not understand about the park right now is our schools all had a field test. They took 2 classes from the 2 subjects, every school district picked 2 classes, and they took this field test to see what it was going to be like. And our whole school take this test. 2 classes, 2 subjects. Huge fail in our school. We needed the IT department out there for 4 days working on this. The computers froze. The kids didn't, confused. Oh my God, I just lost all that work I did. It's a mess, and that's why our school district decided not to do the park again next year. But
your town is kind of unique, at least in my neck of the woods. And then I spoke a little earlier about regionalization. You've got some big shots from regional government included in your town, and that alone brings in all kinds of nasty things, not just into your education, but into a whole host of bylaws we never thought would show up. So, there's a lot of battlefronts here, and one of them to me is we need to revert back away from regional government. These unelected bureaucracies, that's the Soviet system. You put a bunch of bureaucratic entities in line and you have a top-down regulation onto the people rather than the information going out to the legislators. You've got it backwards here in Massachusetts. So, yeah.
the thing about it is if we did Common Core in the budget this year, we have another big problem because the school districts are just spent $65,000 on math books for our middle school. These math books, and it's the math books, the technology, the reteaching of the teachers, the workbook, the software, $65,000. It's going to be in middle school for 6 years. If we kill Common Core, we still have all this material. We invested so much money in it, and now they're looking at the history books and science books that are all going to be Common Core aligned. And our kids are going to be stuck with this material for years and years,
fundraiser, get your school a wood boiler. We can throw all my stuff in there, use the BTUs out of it. We got another question.
John, I've spoken with you before. I have a job in New Hampshire, and told me that the entire state of New Hampshire is Common Core curriculum. Parents like myself who are divorced, and the mother the other parent has the residential responsibility for the dogs. I need a lawyer to go in because pardon my name calling, but some moron teacher accused my son of having ADHD, sent him home to mommy, called mommy into school. Okay, he's got ADHD, sent him up through the line, got him put on drugs. Then I talked her out of it, and he came off the ADHD drugs. Now, since January, they come out with the DSM-5. They can take ADHD and their new federal autism spectrum disorder. It's the exact same symptoms, but the difference is the medication that they order for it. Risperdal is what they order for autism spectrum disorder. No matter how minor their idea is, okay. And my question would be is, where does a parent like me, I'm actually disabled, I'm disabled since 2000, where do I find an attorney? Because they don't do, Disability Rights Commission doesn't do parents' rights or family court rights or anything else like that. They only deal with criminal rights and stuff like that. If you need a lawyer and get because you got to follow the law.
I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know where to advise you on that, because it is because of, I think the expansion of the IEPs, what's happened is kids, any kid could fall into some kind of categorization, any kid could be, characterized as something. So it's a very tricky thing now, because the more we expand our categories for a disabled child, the more we're going to find that any kid could be disabled. Any kid could have,